And Trey being Trey, immediately you could hear this guy grabbing his keys like he was ready to drive to Michigan to come help us.
And you adapt and you go on the fly and just see what happens. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, whatever. We're no strangers to improvisation. Um,
I mean, you could
hang
call us
on.
the Pretty Lights Live of
Yeah,
podcasts, right? I mean, we
that's
just
what I'm
trying
fucking-
things out and seeing what happens, and if it doesn't work, we just keep going and power through it until something does work.
We just keep it going, Ladies and gentlemen, welcome or welcome back. Listen, I want to preface this by saying Christian is alive. I promise that he is. I know
Done welfare checks.
I know it has been a while since you have seen or heard from him. It has not been a while since I have seen or heard from him. He is around. He's going through some technical difficulties per usual. He's getting old now. He's in his 30s, and when you I haven't turned 30, thankfully. But I think that when you do, you hit a certain point where everything technology-wise becomes foreign to you. So I think for him, Anthony, did you experience that when you turned to 30?
Yeah. In fact, I'm 32, 20, 23. Yeah, 32 now, and my body is failing me. I actually did the math, the other day with my mom, and it's been almost 18 years since my last ACL tear. And it probably has a 18-year expiration date. So
You think
yeah, this
another
body
one's
gets
about due?
I don't know. I get my legs get really stiff in movie theaters and car rides and not at shows though. That's the beauty of going to shows. It's pretty much like rehab for me to be able to move for, multiple hours at a time. It's very humbling, to know that you're that old at shows, and it's really not that old. It's just, yeah, you
Yeah.
gotta keep active in some way. So
Yeah. So kind of on that same vein, speaking of the past when we were younger, so today we're going to do a year in review um, with Christian and Anthony, talk about 2023, the shows that we saw that were our favorites, the albums that we listened to that were our favorites, talk about our Spotify rap, things of that nature. But we don't want to do that without Christian. So we're doing a last minute pivot here, and Anthony and I are just kind of going to go off the dome and talk about the music festival, the birth and death of music festivals. I think we're getting to the death of music festivals at this point, but we're gonna talk kind of all about music festivals, our experiences with them, where they've come, where they're at now, things of that nature. Yeah, and just kind of chop it up a little bit, maybe tell some funny stories in the meantime. So I want to start it off, Anthony. What was your first ever music festival?
yeah, so my first one, we kind of stuck our toes in there a little bit during the Carter 2 episode. But yeah, my first festival was Bonnaroo 2012, which was their 10-year anniversary. And yeah, a learning experience without a doubt. I mean, I learned that you got to pace yourself. I learned that you can try to keep up with your friends as far as like keeping a group together, but inevitably people are going to get separated. And that was a huge learning lesson for me, realizing, you look out for yourself, you look out for the people around you, but you try to keep tabs on people in a giant adult playground like Bonnaroo, and you're just going to be stressing, because it's inevitable. People are going to get lost, but people come back with stories to tell. But that being my first festival was a true test, and pass or fail, let's just give me participation points with that because
That's
I made it
fair.
out. I made it out alive and have stories to tell, but of course I could have done it better. So like music festivals to me have always been like a learning experience to where each year you do it better and better and more efficiently, and you get to see the shows that you want to. I mean, your first festival, it's overwhelming just for the sheer amount of people, the sheer amount of artists, the sheer amount of workshops you can get into. Um, so it's okay to miss things, but you
Yeah.
learn from it, and then you start to prioritize the things that you truly want to experience. And whether your group wants to go or not, once you get your bearings in a place and you know where to go and you know how to do it, safely, you can kind of venture off and do those things without without major concern for safety, hopefully. But that's what the time was back then. Those 2012 Bonnaroo beyond loaded lineup, and I was beyond loaded a couple times too. So you got to be careful. You got to
So
be careful out there.
so actually, I need to fact check you here, Anthony. Are you
Was it
sure it
2011?
wasn't 2011?
I think it
I think it
was. Yeah,
was
yeah,
2011.
2011.
Because
It's that
was it
summer.
the Eminem year? Was Eminem a headliner?
No, it was
No.
Wayne or don't quote me on that because remember I was pretty beyond loaded. But if you see Wayne, Pretty Lights, I believe Mumford and Sons, Wiz, Bass Nectar, those were the main artists I remember. I don't know if
So
Widespread was on that lineup that year. I can't remember. I have to pull out the old
I
T-shirt.
think it was oh
Definitely
yeah,
their
so
10-year
20
anniversary.
let's see.
I
So
think it was 2011.
2010 was Jay-Z, Dave Matthews, My
Yeah,
Morning
not that
Jacket, LCD Sound System, and then 2011 was Eminem, Arcade Fire, Widespread Panic, Lil Wayne, My Morning Jacket, String
year.
Cheese, Bass Nectar, Girl Talk. I didn't realize fucking Girl Talk was there.
Yeah,
Girl Talk, Primus, STS9, Wiz, like I mean, Jesus
that's what I mean.
Christ, man.
Did I say overwhelming or not? You know, and like I can look at festivals lineups now and think back and be like, just like that, like so and so was there, Tribe was there, and I just saw Tribe, a couple weeks ago, and it's therapeutic, it's medicine, but realizing now the experience I could have had versus the experience I had, you can't change it, but you can't help but look back and be like, damn, I should have totally done this differently. But that's how you learn, and that's
Yeah.
that's what's gotten me to where I'm at now as far as like a festival going from a festival going aspect, where you can now put everything in perspective and make your own path.
I think
But
what's funny is looking at this lineup down at the very bottom in tiny letters is J. Cole is on here, like way down at the bottom. Portugal the Man is down here, like, and to look at them, I think that's what's so cool about looking at these early festivals. We started going the same year I started going in 2011 as well, and like to see the artists on these lineup posters like then, whereas like J. Cole's
yeah,
at the bottom, and now J. Cole is a fucking Bonnaroo headliner, man. To see that progression through like the festival posters is crazy to me.
yeah, and
Do you?
Bonnaroo being such a diverse festival too. I mean, it checks a lot of boxes music wise, and that's something they've always been pretty solid with. Is diversifying it.
Yeah, I think so too. Do you remember a highlight from that weekend, 2011? What your favorite show was?
There was two. So my favorite show was probably Wiz. I mean, that was like the first time being at a hip hop show and fully taking it all in for what it was. And Wiz is one of those rappers that doesn't get lost in the like his vocals don't get lost in a show. Like
Right.
I would say up to that point, I really hadn't experienced a hip hop show that really translated from what I had been listening to, which is just shit through my headphones, to a live performance. And Wiz was one that it really took it to the next level. Plus the set that he played, if only I could find that, was straight from his mixtapes. I mean, it was Cushion Orange Juice and Cabin Fever and these mixtapes that were
Damn, that's
so
so
sick.
fucking
And
tight,
yeah,
dude.
it fucking crushed. So like if I took anything, there's two things: that Wiz set and a silent disco. That was the first time I ever got to experience a silent disco too, and I don't remember much from it, but the concept itself was so cool to me to see this group of people with just headphones on, with little lights flashing, moving to different music. So like
Yeah.
they probably had three or four producers or musicians or DJs on stage mixing, and everyone is listening to different stuff. So it was just a mob scene, but so cool to witness from afar, and then so cool to experience, no doubt.
Yeah, that's fucking sick. The first festival I ever went to was Hangout 2011. And the lineup
Mm.
here, looking back at it, so it was Paul Simon, Foo Fighters, Widespread Panic, The Black Keys, My Morning Jacket, Flaming Lips, and the Avett Brothers were up at the
Yeah.
top. And then there was STS9, Bass Nectar, Pretty Lights, Girl Talk, Slightly Stupid as well. And then Portugal the Man again down at the bottom. And looking back at it now, like it's funny. I don't think I realized like what I was witnessing at the time that I was
Right.
witnessing it, right? Because in 2011, I think I was how fucking old was I? How many
Did
years
you have
was
a
that?
license then?
13. I was 15. I was
Yeah, right
15
now.
years old. Yeah. So, but I remember like we had seen Bass Hunter. The first Bass Hunter show I went to was in February of that year at Batwell. That was during the
Wow.
should have been the immersive tour, or no, it was way before immersive,
Before
wasn't it? It
that.
was Divergent
It was
Spectrum
even
tour.
before
That's what it
that,
was.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and so I remember obviously being hooked then, but then the whole festival was fucking phenomenal, but like Bass Nectar played that like he played his set and then he played another set. They were doing a thing where like you could pay extra and they were playing shows at night. Like they closed off the tent and they had artists play at night. Like Girl Talk did a show, I think PL did a show, and I know Nectar did a show because Trey and Carly and I all went. And the show during the day, like he played in the middle of the day at that point, like in a tent, and I just remember it being raunchy and sweaty and crazy. I remember him playing the Nirvana in Bloom remix, and then that night we went and the late night shows, like we saw STS9 late night, we saw Bass Center late night, and it was such an experience, and that was the first time being at a festival. It's going from going to concerts like where you see three acts in a row or whatever, like going to a music festival and having three or four stages and just there's music everywhere you walk, like you hear some type of show. And that first experience with that is something that I wish I could forget and go back and have again, because there's
Right.
nothing like that realization that like no matter where I go there's some show. And I think that it's crazy to look back at these lineups and see, Humphreys McGee was also there. Like this lineup was fucking crazy, dude.
Right. And it makes you think too, like at that point in time, did these festivals just have like insane budgets, or were these artists just not being, you know, super paid, right? Because like that's
Yeah,
I mean 10 headliners at least nowadays, that are selling out, I mean, arenas easily, or at least
yeah.
giant theaters, right? So back then in 2011, I mean, Hangout, I don't want to misspeak, but I don't think they had been around for that long. Bonnaroo for
No,
10
that
years,
was their
so it's definitely
second year.
established. Second year,
Yeah,
right? And you're
yeah.
just unloading all those lineups. And then you did slowly see it kind of trickle down over time. But yeah, I mean, what an experience to go to, you know?
Yeah, and I think like it, and even I also went to Lala that year in August in 2011, and it was Eminem, the Foo Fighters, Coldplay, and Muse. But then My Morning Jacket was there, Dead Mouse, Damian Marley with Nas was there, Arctic Monkeys was there, and then Girl Talk, Pretty Lights, Kid Cudi, Skrillex were all there, Jay Electronica, like, and they were playing at Perry's at the time. And I think like you bring up an interesting point that I think that you and it's interesting to see people that started going to festivals. This sounds like elitist, and I'm not trying to be elitist at all, but like it's
The
interesting to
humble
see people
brag coming.
that got into festivals like in 2015 and 16 and 17, because I think that early phase, the 2011 and 2013, like you're saying, these artists weren't established to the degree that they are now. Like they weren't at that level yet. So I don't even think that it's really about the budget. I think like a Bass Nectar set in 2011 probably cost a fraction of what it costs in 2016, right? So it's like
Right.
those early years of those festivals were they just jammed so much into those lineups because it wasn't as expensive to do, and I think that's kind of what I blame this fall off of music festivals. It's not really even their fault. It's just these artists have gotten so big they can't afford to
Yeah.
pack the lineups the way that they used to. Um,
It's the catch 22 of once you establish yourself, then you have to kind of keep up with that, and it's almost not sustainable, especially as the artists start to grow and the crowds start to grow and the greed starts to grow in reality. I mean, like the people who are benefiting from festivals, it's hard, it's probably got to be hard to resist. I can't know that feeling, but when you have people foaming at the mouth for the next year and the next year and the next year, and can only try to deliver so much, that it's not likely sustainable. But you see
yeah,
who kind of survives and who sticks around, and it's these OGs. I mean, Bonnaroo this year I think is a really good example of delivering pretty solid lineup, especially in comparison to the past. I think it's at a good pace, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's what's crazy is like 2016 to 18, there was like this implosion of fucking
Mm.
music festivals. It was like every weekend there's a new music festival that was starting. And I remember during that run, it was very much like my festival chasing was centered around Bass Nectar completely, but there are festivals that don't exist anymore that I haven't heard of since then, like Euphoria in Austin, Texas. We saw Bass Hunter there, and I don't know if Euphoria is still going on, or like Okeechobee. Like he kind of that we were there the first year of Okeechobee and those 2 years
Right.
after the fact, and like Okeechobee had to take a year off. I'm assuming because they didn't have the finances to run it every year and things like that. But it felt like there was like a boom, a music festival boom around 2016, and then it started to fade away, and we're kind
Yeah.
of left with what we had in the beginning. You know?
Right. Yeah. Counterpoint's are probably a really good example of that. Counterpoint was a sick festival, and it might have been 2014, 15, 16, that time frame too, but it didn't last more than I think 3 or 4 years. It changed locations a couple times, and some of that could be due to just lack of organization or promoter conflict or whatever internal stuff is happening. But that was a festival that like had so much potential, especially in the South. That's not Bonnaroo or the Hangout. It was kind of this middle ground to where it's like it's in a good space in Georgia. The artists that they booked were consistently, fire, but it just didn't have the longevity or the staying power. But it's
Yeah.
unfortunate that you see these things come and go, and it's like, man, if only it was still around. But you can also look back and say, I'm very lucky to have gone there when I could.
Yeah. No, I think so too. And you know what's interesting is I think like one of the prime examples of how these festivals kind of change over time, like and whether it be for the better or not, like Electric Forest is kind of like a prime example of that. Like I think if people now look at Electric Forest is essentially just EDC in the woods now. Like I think
Right.
Cheese still plays like a set, but or a set or two or whatever they do, right? But initially, Electric Forest, like looking at the 2012 lineup, they had the String Cheese Incident, two shows, Bass Nectar, STS9, Girl Talk, Steve Aoki, and then they had going down the lineup. There's a really healthy mix here of
Grizz's
jam
first fest was
bands.
that year.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so
That was
there's
a
like
that was a big deal.
there's a really good mix here, like those early years of Electric Forest of jam bands and electronic artists, and then as the years progressed, like Cheese kind of started. There were years where in that 2016 era, 2016, 17, 18, whatever, they were playing, two sets a night. They were playing six total sets, and then it kind of got phased down, and Bass Nectar was playing two sets, and then they branched out to 2 weekends, and it's like they
Right.
slowly over time just pulled away from this jam band aspect, and now it's like an electronic festival, but it brings it, I'm assuming it just that's what brings in the money. Now it doesn't feel like a festival
Right.
that you would want to see a jam band at. Like it doesn't seem like they would attract a crowd that would appreciate that type of music.
Yeah, and the CDJ factor I think is very prevalent too in a lot of these festivals, where like I'm not very fluent on the type of gear that people are using to perform live with, but the simplicity of someone being able to walk up on stage, plug in their USB, and then mix on the decks that are already on the table makes for such quick turnover. So it's like it does make sense from an efficiency standpoint to book all these DJs and producers, of all different genres, but still it does draw a totally different type of crowd than you might see at a like typical just Swanee bluegrass festival, or something
Right.
out in Colorado too, or Telluride kind of feel. It's just
Yeah.
it has its pros and cons, and yes, you may sell it out, but you also may have a lot of medical emergencies. I mean, like there's tons of factors that come with that, and yeah, running a festival, I can only imagine, just the logistics of it all. But I think when you try things like that, you try to stretch yourself out for 2 days. I mean, you can see the success rate of it is not that great, and then it kind of humbles you back to what worked in the past and trying to get back to that. At least try to reestablish, that kind of credit with the community.
Yeah, no, for
But
sure.
that festival, I do want to say this about Electric Forest because, uh, I talked about my getting, overloaded at Bonnaroo and Electric Forest the next year, next summer. That was the festival that I went to in 2012, and I was on probation at the time. So this was my first festival to do completely sober, and that experience in itself was life changing for me because I'd experimented with all sorts of drugs and especially within the music culture, and it totally enhanced my experience back then. But being able to experience that whole festival completely sober changed my whole perception on how to experience shows because I realized, very quickly, like I was getting high off of this atmosphere, off of this energy that was just resonating from the community. Just being able to post up in the campsites or walk through the campsites or just go and be able to experience all these shows, was such a complete 180 for me from the year prior at Bonner when I'm trying to figure out where I'm at or which stage is that
Yeah.
stage and what stage, and that didn't help, you
Yeah.
know. But at Forest though, it was such an eye-opening experience because I went with a small group. There was three of us, me and a guy and a girl, and we all ventured out and we all came back, and it was such a learning experience. And I realized I could do this, and there's no need for that. I mean, there's still ways to enhance your experience chemically, but like having been kind of forced into that situation, having to be sober, totally changed my perception on just how to experience live shows moving forward. And I realized, you can get that same feeling. You can get more than that without ingesting any substances. So that was like
Yeah.
such a cool experience.
No, I think that is really cool. And like that's I was just looking at this lineup. So the first Bonnaroo I went to was 2013. And the
Gotcha.
headliners that year were Paul McCartney, Mumford and Sons, Tom Petty, Bjork, Wilco, and Pretty Lights. That was like the top line. But I guess the first three would be what you consider. Also, a little funny tidbit: R. Kelly was on this lineup.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
Wu Tang was there, Kendrick was there.
Yeah.
There was a lot of good acts. But what's funny is there were years that we were talking about this earlier. Like I think the lineup this year for Bonnaroo is probably the weakest I've ever seen them put out. Arguably, apart from 2017, I think 2017 was like the weakest one. And I worked 2017, so I didn't pay for the ticket.
Hmm.
But I think like kind of on the same vein of like being sober, Bonnaroo for me always felt like a place that kind of what you're talking about. Like there's so much happening, and there's this crazy sense of community and camaraderie and all this stuff to do at Bonnaroo that I didn't like. I never felt that I had to be, under the influence to enjoy myself at Bonnaroo or to really love the lineup to enjoy myself at Bonnaroo. Like there were years that I went where like 2017 is a prime example. I liked some of the artists there, but as a whole, I wasn't like, oh, I need to go for the lineup. I went because I wanted to be at Bonnaroo, and it was the type of
Right.
that place is the type of experience where that's why like I find so much joy in bringing people to music festivals, but Bonnaroo in particular. Like last year, 2023, I went with people that I had never been. 2022, I went with people that I had never been, and it's just fun for them to see that world and with their own eyes for the first time. And like when the sun sets at Bonnaroo, it's like a whole different planet, dude. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's so big and there's so much to do, and like I think that's why it's always going to hold a special place in my heart. But I feel the same way. Like, there are times where, I the the night would come to an end and it's late at night, and like I haven't been drinking. I've been at shows and I'm sober at this point, walking back like to my campsite, which is fucking 500 acres away or whatever.
Mhm.
And I'm just
Right.
taking in like everything around me, and realizing like this is an adventure all in itself. Like you don't have to be on anything to enjoy this type of environment, which I think is really special. And I think Bonnaroo really nails that.
Yeah. I mean, the key word there is environment. I mean, like you create a space for people, like the thing that always drew me to festival culture and even show culture, music show culture was the lack of judgment, and when you can experience that in full on fashion, uh, and know that it's right there, it is something that it can't be, it can be replicated, but you can't, like, you have to go and experience something like that to know it. And I remember
Yeah.
coming back from a festival, and you still have that festival mindset of like, well, what there's is there rules? Like, what are the rules? Like, we have to follow,
Yeah.
we have to fall back kind of into, you have to like reintegrate yourself back into
Yeah.
society after a full on, 4 days out in the, on the farm in Bonnaroo.
Yeah.
It's an interesting experience to kind of come back to reality and realize, all right, we can't just have anything out in the open out here. You
Yeah,
gotta
yeah. You have to
abide.
like. There's not a more like stark contrast than going from Bonnaroo to the airport. Like
Yeah.
you leave Bonnaroo and then you go through TSA and like it's like jumping into a fucking ice bath. You're like, oh shit, I have to go back to normal life now.
Yeah. Yeah. We gotta figure this out. Yeah. Now.
Yeah.
But I want to
So
say this on, speaking on bringing people to festivals, like that is it's such a gift that you are able to give people in a sense. It's like, people are always skeptical. People will have their, comments on, well, you're just going for this or that, or why are you going to waste your time or waste your money? Because that was, festivals, it's not a cheap thing, but finding a way to participate or be involved, whether it's promoting, like I promoted so many festivals just by hanging up posters around, Birmingham and getting free tickets for that. But being able to bring people to festivals or shows, I think, is something that is so underrated because of two things: like the person willing or wanting to bring someone, and then the other person willing to go, like to take that step forward and say, all right, yeah, let's go, let's do it. Because there was a time, and you'll have to find the year for me, but there was a time where we were sitting in Christian's little house, I guess duplex, and I had my car packed, ready to go to Michigan, to Electric Forest, and I asked you if you wanted to go, and that was I was so glad that you decided to do it, because I mean, like, you walk us through that. What is it like to be asked right now to go, and then what is it like to do it?
yeah, so
Because
that was Electric Force 2018, if I remember correctly. And we wanted to go just
it
to
was for a night
we wanted to go for a night. So we
from
wanted
Birmingham.
we wanted to drive up there and get there because it was what, like a 10-hour drive, I think, and we
Yeah,
wanted to
10 to 12.
get there in the
Hmm.
morning, and go basically spend the day there, see Bass Nectar, and then leave after he was done. And I remember, we were hanging out in the duplex, and you came in and you're like, yo, I'm about to do this. So, like, does anyone want to come with me? And I was sitting on the fence. And I remember actually at the time, Emily was with us, or I
Yeah.
was dating Emily at the time. And we were the only ones. Like, I know Christian was there. I don't know who else was there with us, but there was a room full of people.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, let's just go. There's what else are we doing? And we jump in the car, we drive through the night, and I remember we had a wonderful prank, which I know Trey will appreciate, where
Oh,
so we didn't have tickets. And our plan was, I don't remember exactly what our plan was. It was to sneak in some way. I don't know if we were going to borrow people's wristbands. I think that might have
yeah.
been what we were doing.
Right.
Um, or somebody was going to give us a wristband, something to that degree.
Hmm.
And so we were all super worried about getting in. Trey was worried for us. We get there, whoever had the wristbands hooked us up, and so we get in. And then our brilliant plan is to call Trey, and you call Trey and
Yeah.
tell him that I was drinking 40s on the way up to the festival, and that when I got there I was belligerent and I ran through security and got arrested. And Trey, being Trey, immediately you could hear this guy grabbing his keys like he was ready to drive to Michigan to come help us. And you had to be like, yo, I'm just kidding. Like, he's fine. We just wanted to fuck with you, which I know Trey did not appreciate, but we
No.
thought was really fucking funny. And
Uh-uh.
we show up, and we get in. We had no problems getting in, and we had those wristbands or whatever, and we spent the whole day kind of just kicking it around Electric Forest. I hadn't been before, so we got to just walk around the forest and experience that. And then I still remember that year Bass Nectar opened up with Voodoo, which is one of my favorite Bass Nectar songs ever. And like the show was just fucking pedal to the floor. Like he played Flood on the Floor by Purity Ring, which I love. Like, and I just remember the experience. And the cheese set before, I don't know if you remember, the cheese set before was also crazy because it was Saturday Night Cheese, and like they always threw a fucking party. And so we had a great time at Cheese, had a killer time at Bass Nectar, and then we just like embraced the forest at night. We walked around, looked at the lights, did all that shit, and then drove home on a whim. And I remember there was a moment where Landon Denny was there actually, and he was with us, and something had happened to his wristband. Like it had gotten taken or he got cut off or something like that. And I had my wristband, and I don't think, and I don't know if Landon knew this or not. I don't know if he knew that we had just gone up there for a day, but like I gave him my wristband, and Landon, I seriously thought was going to cry. Like he hugged me and was like, "You don't know what this means to me." And I was just like, "Yeah, man, like, you know it." Like I didn't want to be like, "I'm fucking leaving anyway," but yeah.
Yeah, right.
So I gave it, and like, he was just so happy. And like, the group we were with was awesome. But that, I think like when I meet new people, some of those best experiences are those last minute, like, we're just going to fucking do it. We don't have a plan set in stone. We don't have anything really ready to go, but like, this is what we want to do and we're going to do it. And I've done that, for festivals. I've done that for shows. Like I went to New York to see Bass Nectar at Elements, and I had no plans whatsoever. I didn't have anybody to stay with. I was going to go to the show, fly back. Like those moments are the best. And I think like having someone like you come in and be like, let's do this. It was like, finally, someone's on the same fucking page as me. Like, let's just do it,
No, that feeling is so mutual, and like there's an old saying, I think it's Hunter S. Thompson, like buy the ticket, take the ride, enjoy the trip, something like that. Maybe it's not him, but the idea is like, take the chance. I mean, if it makes sense, if your responsibilities are taken care of, if you can, financially do it, if you can physically do it, why not? I mean, it's one of those things to where you very rarely, if ever, regret doing something like that. I mean, granted, if something terrible happens, that is a whole different story, but like you come out of that with experience, you come out of that with knowledge, you come out of that with just pure joy. And like, I mentioned it before, like whether it's a concert, whether it's a festival, whether it's just immersing yourself in a novel environment, like there is so much growth that's happening through that and so much healing that is happening through that you may not realize you needed, but you got it. And then look at what happened after the fact. And so you can go to a show nowadays and I still get this afterglow feeling for days afterwards. I mean, like this recent Pretty Lights tour, when it ended, I mean, it may have ended physically, but like mentally and spiritually and emotionally, you still vibe off of it, for weeks afterwards. And that's something that you can't pay for that. I mean, you can, but like in reality, it's you being open to that experience that makes it so worthwhile.
Yeah. And I think like, I don't remember who it was, but there was a Bonnaroo that I went to where, and this was fairly recent, it might've been in 2022, but one of the artists was like, take this feeling that you have and carry it with you outside of here. It doesn't have to end here. Like this feeling of connection that you have with the people around you and that level of happiness, it's not confined to Bonnaroo, right? Like you can, or any festival, you can take that and go and spread it around. And I think that's like, it's so hard, the emotional crash when you leave a festival like that and you've had like the best time of your life. Like it's hard to carry that kind of energy with you when you leave, but it's something that I feel like we owe to ourselves to not like just let it die immediately after it's over. Like this past year at Bonnaroo, like I had said that, and I still believe that like it was the last dance. Like I was ready to be done with Bonnaroo. Like I love it. I always will. And I've had an amazing time there, but like, I've been 8 times. Like there's other things I want to experience. And like you said, they're expensive. And I just remember the last day, like we were all sitting and some people had gone to bed. And so there was probably like 4 or 5 of us out under the RV and it was raining. And they were all kind of just talking about their experience and like how much they enjoyed it. And I like couldn't speak. Like I was literally crying, and they're like, yo, are you fucking good? Like, what the fuck is going on? But it was like, in my mind, it was like I knew it was going to be the last one, and it was just this flood of the past 10 years like coming back to me, and realizing like all of these beautiful moments I've shared with people and artists and in the farm and all of that stuff. And it was just like this really heavy feeling, but in a good way. You know, it was nice to be able to look back and say, like, I did this. I had these experiences and they were a lot of fun. And I saw artists that I never thought I would see in my life. And some of the shows, like, over the past 10 years of Bonnaroo, shows that will stick with me forever, dude. Like 2015 Bass Nectar, or even 2023 JID, like those shows all across those years, there's those shows that leave like a visceral impact on you. And I don't think I can get that anywhere else, you know, not to that level. And I think that's what makes it so special.
Yeah.
What do you think? Camping festival or city festival? What's your ideal? How do you feel about the two versus each
Okay.
other?
So they both have their pros and cons, you know. I'll start with like city festivals. They're going to end at a certain time, and you're going to be able to go and sleep in a bed typically, or in your car like me, or drive all the way back home and sleep in your own bed, you know. So it's like the pros for city festivals I typically would do for a day, you know, and that I would typically be traveling for an artist and try to promote the festival, so that way I could get a comp ticket. But I always enjoyed them, but there was always this lacking of like, I don't know. I would just speak on the crowds. You know, I mean, you get crowds that are likely doing the same thing, just rolling right from work or rolling right from their house, or pre-gaming at their house and then driving to the festival. That was always a thing that was happening, and it does bring a different vibe. Now, I think at any show you can find negativity if you search for it, or if you let it, you know, impact you. It is there, but there's also tons of positivity there too. And like the beauty of seeing city festivals was kind of like integrating with the local scene. You know, Chicago. Shit, I'm not gonna remember what the festival in Chicago. Music's
Lala?
no. The other
Mu-
festival. Oh
mm,
dang, I'm just drawing a blank.
I know there's Music Midtown in Atlanta.
No, there's another one in Chicago, but
North
anyway,
Coast?
yeah, North Coast, yeah. So like I went to North Coast for a day, and like I had this whole mental image of what North Coast was like. And then when I got there, so like I had listened to the Bass Sector North Coast 2011 set, which is a fucking crusher of a set. And I had this whole mental image of it. Never seen videos, never looked up videos, but like I had this idea of what it was going to be. And it turns out it was a city festival, and I didn't even have that knowledge until I got there. So like taking the train to get there was a cool experience. But when you're there, it's just different, you know. And like I was expecting to be out in the woods, and it just wasn't that. There's gravel underneath your feet. So
Yeah.
like there's this whole different feel of a festival experience, you know. But in my mind, it's hard to top camping festivals, just because it doesn't necessarily end at midnight, you know,
Right.
or at 1. It keeps going. But that's when things get really interesting, because in these camping festivals, you have these workshops that are happening during the day and at night. There's installations. The first Okeechobee was so interesting because they had this whole like, I don't know, igloo city. It was weird. It was like it felt like Cinnaru at Bonnaroo, but it was these little mini domes that were all set up that had all these different activities and installations, and it didn't open until after the music ended. So
Right.
it was this whole nother experience that we didn't even know was going to happen until it was already upon us. So that was super cool. I mean, the idea of camping too. Camping has been such a learning experience for me, where, you know, you start just typical camping with a tent, and then you realize, all right, it's hot as hell in a tent. How do you keep it cool so you don't have to get up when the sun comes up necessarily? So you get some fans and you figure that part out. But then, you know, over time, I started to realize how efficient and comfortable it was to camp in hammocks. Like hammocks are my go-to if I'm going to camp overnight at a festival. I have a hammock with me, and I have a hammock stand and a sleeping bag. And those three things right there, I've slept through pretty much every element except for straight up downpour rain.
Yeah.
But super cold, super hot, you figure out how to do that, and you're pretty much set, and you're refreshed for the next day. Um, so for me, I mean, it's hard to top camping festivals, but they both have their pros and cons. But if you ask me, I'm going out in the woods. We're going camping.
Yeah. No,
Mm-hmm.
no, that's definitely fair.
What about you?
I like, you know, I have to agree, like the overall environment and just kind of experience of a camping festival is cool because everybody is there for essentially the entirety of it, right? Like when the shows end, those same people are still wandering around the festivals, and like that the majority of the people are experiencing the same things as you for the same amount of time, and there's so much to do, especially like honestly, man, obviously Bonnaroo, there's so much to do there now outside of Centeroo, but hats off to Okeechobee. Like Okeechobee's first year, those first few years they did it, they did a phenomenal job. And I
Yeah,
remember the first year of Okeechobee being kind of blown away at how similar to Bonnaroo it felt.
yeah,
And that camping experience was that whole festival, man, was still goes down as one of my favorites I've ever experienced. And I've been to a fuck ton of music
yeah.
festivals, and that one really kind of sticks out of my mind. But I always like I went to Lollapalooza 3 years. I went 2011, 14, and 15, and I always really enjoyed it. I love the city of Chicago, and like you said, I love the like. There was a year that Carly and I went with Todd in 2014, and we went to Lala during the day, and then Lala ends at like 10. And so there's shit going on in the city. And Cage the Elephant played the Vic in Chicago, and Carly and I got a ticket to the show at the
Wow.
Vic and rode the rail down to
Yeah.
where we had to go. Like it was just an experience to be out in Chicago and like having a good time. And the same thing when I went for 2015. I met up with Christian and we just hung out in Chicago. We went to a bar downtown and like just hung out, and it was just nice I do like that experience. Like I like having other stuff to do, and and to be honest, like sometimes I like sleeping in a hotel bed, man. Like I love camping.
You
Like
like taking showers?
yeah, like it's a blast. And when I camp, like everybody gives me shit. Like when I'm at Bonnaroo, I don't shower. Like I'll do a whore bath. Like I'll baby wipe myself and use a gallon jug or whatever. And that's fun sometimes. Like I like to rough it, but something about like a long day, especially at Lala when you're on concrete, like and you're experiencing just like a long day, like to go home and lay in a fucking huge king bed or something is just it's a good feeling. And so there's definitely merit. I've been to a lot of city festivals, and like you said, the environment's really different than it is at a camping festival. But I think it's not. I don't think it's anything to knock. It's still great to be able to go and enjoy it and see all those artists. But a camping festival, you're in it, man, and you're not getting out of it. Like you're immersed in that shit, and that's just a cool experience to be a part of. I think so. Pros
Right.
and cons. Pros and cons.
Yeah. So you would say Okeechobee that first year, that's your favorite festival
I,
that
don't-
you've
I
been
was just
to?
about to ask you what you think what your top festival is. I don't know if I could lay it down. Like, so what was that first year was 2018 Okeechobee,
No,
right?
no, no. 2016.
Oh shit, it was that early?
Yeah.
Holy fuck. I didn't realize it was so early. Hang on, let me pull up this lineup.
It just feels
Um,
like so long ago now, or doesn't
yeah,
feel like that long ago.
I know. Yeah, so Mumford, Kendrick, Skrillex, Bass Nectar, Robert Plant, Odessa, Future, Miguel, uh Big Grams was there, so Big Boy and Fanagram. Mac was there. That Mac show, man. Rest in peace to the goat. That fucking Mac show was so good.
Mhm.
Portugal the Man show was great. Grammatic, Lotus. That lineup was fucking crazy, dude.
Yeah.
Holy
Spangle,
shit.
lettuce. Mhm.
Yeah. It's up there, man. It's up there. I don't know. You tell me what you think yours is. I got to comb through a couple lineup posters and see if I can narrow it down.
Well, I'll say this, because like music wise, I mean, every festival that I've been to hits what I want, from a music standpoint. But like the thing that I'll say is my favorite festival, it's more of like a situation that happened that probably won't ha- ever happen again. So let's see the year of this. I might have to go get the poster off of my wall and see. But so I, oh shit, I don't know what year this is, but it only happened one time, and the festival is called Creatures of the Night. This was gonna be like this epic camping and music festival in Tennessee. First time they ever threw it. The promoters were fans like us who just kind of pulled together and put together this insane lineup of music. So I'll just kind of go down some names that are on here. It's insane. This is just musicians first. You got Lotus, Papadozio, Keller Williams, Dopapod, Random Rab, G Jones, Mr. Bill, Pigeons playing ping pong, Space
Fuck
Jesus
yeah.
in the time, Aqueous, Levitation Jones in the time, CBDB. It's
Damn.
insanely loaded, right?
Nice.
So night one happens, goes off pretty much without any issues, and night two starts, and I think it's before the sun goes down, or as the sun is going down, word starts kind of floating around the festival that it's canceled. So everyone is out in the middle of the woods or out somewhere in Tennessee and starting to figure out like what everyone's trying to figure out what is happening. No information is getting translated. Everyone's service is gone, but people are just communicating word of mouth, saying like Papadozio has left the festival. They're not even here anymore. Like so and so's set is canceled. What is going on? So it it came about to the community that was there because this is like a smaller, lower tier festival, but there's a bunch of like dedicated music fans that are there. Um, so it came about that the festival was indeed going to be canceled. None of the scheduled artists were obligated to perform anymore. They they gave everyone an option. They said you can leave. I don't remember any mentions of refunds or anything like that, but they said you can leave or you can stay. And they're like, you can stay till Monday morning and just kind of do your thing. You're already here, right? And they weren't going to kick anybody out, I guess is what they were getting at. And it ended up being so fucking cool because of the musicians that stayed and the visual artists that stayed and the vendors that stayed and the food vendors. It was such
Yeah.
a it became its own grassroots festival in real time. I mean,
That's
artists like
fucking
dude,
insane, dude.
artists like Amanda Sage, who is an incredible visionary artist, she held her workshop in the middle of the day, like the following day, and it was packed. There was like a 5 hour fire performance happening that night that it got canceled. That just never seemed like it was going to end. Um, Aqueous played, Of the Trees played. These were the first time I got to see these artists in that type of environment. It was so fucking cool because you realize no one's getting paid anymore. You know, this is
Yeah.
purely like we're here, we're in the moment, we're going to make the best of it, and here it is. It's happening. And that festival was also so unique because it was a camp anywhere setup. Like you could drive your
Yeah.
vehicle fairly close to where these stages were and post up, and it just became such a beautiful atmosphere because of just the community that came together,
Yeah.
in real time, in a time where people could get all pissed off and they could get sour and demand their money back or just bitch. But it wasn't like that at all. It was the complete opposite. So like that poster I have hanging up in my kitchen, it will be up wherever I live because of that experience, even though knowing half of those artists didn't even get to play their sets. That was going to be the first time I saw Papadozio was in that environment and they canceled. But it turns out, a month or later on that month on my birthday, I got to see him for the first time. And that experience was so special in itself. So that Creatures of the
Yeah.
Night, I want to say 2015, but give or take, whatever year it
Yeah.
was, it
That's
was
fucking
so special.
insane,
So
dude. That's
cool.
an
Hmm.
insane story. That's so fucking sick, dude. I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah, it's like those experiences that gives you like a glimpse inside of how this community really can treat each other, And I
Hmm.
think like a lot of that gets lost at these massive festivals. Not that it's completely gone, but those smaller festivals in those early years, like those first years of festivals like Okeechobee, like there's just something special about being with people that are kind of there for a new experience together. They don't have any preconceived notion of how this is supposed to go and how
Right.
these things are supposed to happen, and so they're willing to make things happen. I pulled up the 2015 Bonnaroo lineup. So I would say
Yeah.
in the running: 2013 Bonnaroo, 2015 Bonnaroo, 2016 Okeechobee, or 2011 Hangout. Those are And I gotta throw a 2011 Lollapalooza in there too, because Eminem was there. I mean, he was also there at 14, but like that was my first time seeing Eminem, and obviously I'm a stan. Everybody knows that. But so the 2015 one was some of the highlights. So Grammatic was there, Glass Animals was there. This was Glass Animals before they were big, and they played in a tent like late night on Thursday. And we were with a bunch of people that hadn't heard of them, hadn't seen them, and like that experience was, they put on a great show. But there was Moon Taxi was there, King Gizzard was there, My Morning Jacket, Bass Nectar, Childish Gambino, Flume, Hosier. Saturday was fucking stacked. Gary Clark Jr. was there. And then Sunday, Billy Joel, Florence and the Machine, Robert Plant and the Sensational Space Shifters. Spoon was there. Like, it was just the fucking, it was a killer lineup, but the experience was great. But I remember that, and Trey's gonna kill me for bringing this up. I don't even think it's on here. They might have posted it later. This was the year that Bass Nectar played the same time Pretty Lights did a super jam, and our group was split. And so a bunch of us went to Bass Nectar. Trey obviously went to Pretty Lights Super Jam, but this is to date one of my all-time favorite Bass Nectar shows. And Trey, I remember telling me after the fact, like, I should have just gone to the Bass Nectar set because I could hear it everywhere I fucking went, because it was so loud. And that experience, like, man, Nectar on the Farm, it's crazy. But that Bonnaroo, like, I felt like I'd been 2013 and 14, and I felt like I had a lay of the land. Like, I knew where I was, and like it felt like home, right? Like I felt comfortable there finally. And so the group I was with, the lineup that was there, the Bass Nectar show, like all that shit just kind of came together. And that felt like really like a pinnacle of kind of where I was at in like the music fest, in all the music festivals. Like it just all came together perfectly.
That's such a cool, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it's like, that's such a cool thing that festivals do also, is like music wise, like you could be just wandering around and some music from some direction can just draw you to it, you know, whether you even know who's playing or not. Like that's such a cool thing that happens because it's just organic, you know, you just kind of go where your ears tell you to go, and they don't let you down.
Yeah. I do have to say, so I got to tell this story. The first Bonnaroo we ever went to was 2013, and we had a pop-up camper at the time. And so I went with a group there was 8 of us in total. Zach was there, Ashton, Randy, you know, it was a small group. And we went and we took the pop-up camper, right? We get there to the festival. This is all of our first Bonnaroos. So like we knew from Carly's experience, like what we needed, right? So we had alcohol, we had food to some degree or whatever. We roll up to the campsite, the RV campsite. We can't get the tent to pop up. We can't, because the pop-up camper. So we can't get the camper to pop up. So I'm sticking the tool in, like we had just driven to Bonnaroo. It's late at night. We're trying to set up. We can't fucking get it to pop up. So we're going through hell trying to get this thing to work. We're asking people around us, like, does anybody know how they can get this up? Like, is there anything we can do? It's hours. At one point, we pulled a beer out and we're like, fuck this. Like, we're just going to drink. We can't figure it out. We'll sleep in the grass. Like, we've thrown our hands up. We're eating Pop-Tarts. Like, we don't know what the fuck to do. Finally, an old guy comes over, and he's in one of these like double-decker massive fucking RVs. And he comes over and he's like, he looks underneath and he's like, I think I know how to get it up. He takes like a wrench, whatever. He pops some piece off at the bottom. He starts manually cranking it one piece at a time, like one click at a time with a wrench. So we see it's like slowly going up. And we're all freaking out. And he goes, I can get it up, but I don't think I can get it back down. And so at the time, we're like, what the fuck ever, man? We'll deal with that in 4 days. Like, we just want to get the pop-up camper up. We get it up. We get everything set up, whatever. Happy Bonnaroo. We rage. We have a great time. Then it's time to leave Sunday night. And the beds, you would pop the camper out and pull the beds out at the side. So we push the beds in, we load everything up, and then we remember, oh yeah, we can't get this back down. And so I had a Jeep Liberty at the time. We're like, what the fuck? Like, we need to get out of Bonnaroo. We can't pop this down. We can't leave it here. So we attach the camper to my Jeep with it still popped up. Zach's in the car with me. I think it's me, Zach, and Ashton in my Jeep. We drive out of the festival and we're going slow as shit. We're probably driving 20 miles an hour to get out of Bonnaroo. We get onto the highway. There's police everywhere because people are starting to leave the festival. We're driving in essentially the breakdown lane with the hazards on. The pop-up camper popped up. And we're driving, and some police officer, Zach, I still remember this to this day. Zach's in my passenger seat, and he has his arm out the window, and he's kind of just looking or whatever. He looks over, and there's a police officer. The police officer turns around, looks at him, looks at the camper, looks back at him, and goes, "Put the top down!" Screams, and Zach kind of throws his hands up, "What do you think? We're not trying to do this. We can't get it down." Me, Zach, and Ashton proceeded to sit in Tennessee for the next 3 days trying to figure out what the fuck we were going to do.
Wow.
Oh God, Jinx is acting up. We're sitting in Tennessee for the next 3 days trying to figure out what we're going to do. We're at some shitty motel. Finally, a storm's rolling in. I'm like, if it starts to rain, we can't get this camper down. It's going to fuck this thing up. So we go outside, and I stick the tool, and I'm like, let me just try one more time. Let's just see. I stick the fucking tool in the thing. Camper starts to crank down. Just lowers itself perfectly. We're screaming. It starts to downpour. We're in the rain, just fully drenched, screaming, hugging each other. We finally got the camper down, and I just remember driving it home, and it was a whole process to fix after the fact. But that was my first ever Bonnaroo experience, was the camper that didn't work. But it came together.
3 days, yeah. It worked when it wanted to.
Yeah, exactly.
It's still, a great experience. Those things you can't curate. It just happens, and you roll with it, and come out with good stories. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, before we move on to rides or dies, you got any final thoughts you want to share? Anything you want to talk about festival wise we haven't talked about? No, I know there's so much more. We could talk for fucking 3 hours with the festivals that you and I have been to.
Yeah, no, my advice to people. Well, so one thing that definitely helped over time was to make a list of shit to bring. The first festival, you just wing it. Second one, you think you have an idea, but then eventually I remember I had a Word doc that was just festival to bring list. And that was super helpful because me being last minute, I would just load shit up and go, but plan for it if you can, as best you can, I guess I should say. But also, if you're debating on going, fucking go. There's just only one way to find out, what it's all about or what the experience is going to be for you, and that's to actually go and experience it. So yeah, if you're ever debating it, do it. If other people are holding you back from going to see shows you want to see, say, I will catch up with you later, and just be responsible, because that's one thing you're not going to be able to please everyone, and there's going to be conflicts at these things. But if there's somebody you want to see and you've got a good lay of the land and you know where to go and you know where to meet, do that, but it's asking a lot for a lot of people. I get that. 'Cause you're maybe all at your first festival for the first time, but if there's a way to compromise, if there's a way to go and see artists you want to see, do it. Otherwise, be content with where you are. As far as what artists you're seeing, don't wish you were somewhere else when you're at the festival. If you have a chance, go do it.
Yeah, so I would say my piece of advice: hydrate. For the love of God, hydrate, please. Drink water. You're never drinking enough water, I promise. If you're going to any festival, wear good shoes. You're going to be standing for a long ass time. And if you're a drug user, monitor your drug use, please. Test your drugs, take care of each other. Know what you can handle, know what you can't. But yeah, like Anthony said, just go, man. Plan it. Figure it out. Find a group. Doesn't matter if it's your first one, it's your 10th one. You go with a veteran. You go with all newbies. Whatever. You guys are going to have a good time, and it's always worth going. So that's kind of mine and Jinx's spiel on that whole thing.
Fuck yeah! And solo's not a bad way to do it either. I'll say.
No, it's not. I've been to multiple Bonnaroos
everywhere.
I've been to multiple Bonnaroos by myself, and I enjoyed all of them. So they've been a blast. All right, let's get into rides or dies. Intro your track for us.
All right, so my track for this one is called Untitled Chapter. It's by a band called Untitled Chapter. It's a 2019 EP. It's called Untitled Chapter. It's a 2019 EP. All right, so My Ride or Die, it's a track by a homie named Mind Dex. This dude has progressively grown in the music scene from an awareness standpoint. He's always been a prolific producer. Um, since the first time I saw him, I couldn't tell you when or where it was, but some little dive bar in Atlanta probably was the first time I got to see him, or maybe at a Tipper Festival. But I want to think it was before that. But either way, um, he used to play this song in his sets, and I never knew what it was, couldn't find it. Reached out to him and said, yo, what is this track at this time? And basically the response I would get was just be patient. So I had to wait a long time to figure out what this song was even called. But every time I heard it live, it fucking just kicked everything off to another gear. So I guess the pronunciation is no so rog. But when he finally released it, I was like, this is that fucking track. I can't wait to put it on repeat and hear it on a system, personally,
Yeah.
was so fucking stoked. So, No Rock by Mindex. What'd you think?
Nice. We've talked about this type of music before. It's kind of hit or miss for me, but hang on a second. Jinx is losing her patience with me. Don't
She's
worry,
it's
almost over. I enjoyed it. Like this music is an acquired taste for sure, and I'm not really in the same sphere as you guys are when it comes to this type of music, but I do enjoy it every once in a while, and so I think like with it being a rides or dies track, it's perfect for me. I get my little taste of it. I can kind of let it ride, and then maybe revisit it down the road. But I did like it. I think that's cool as shit. That's how you first came to hear about it, and learned about it. I think that's tight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very good experience for me to finally say this is that track. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
all right, let's hear what you got to say about with your little.
All right, so. Oh God, I just want to hear what you have to say about it. So I gotta say, shout out to my boy Jeff. So everyone knows this. I'm a known nerd. I'm a known nerd, and I play World of Warcraft. And a friend of mine that I play World of Warcraft, Discord name is Southern Perp, which I think you would appreciate. His name is Jeff. He's been going through a sad boy phase recently, so we've been talking about sad boy music. And Suicide Boys is very sad boy music, and so I picked Paris by Suicide Boys, which is a little bit harder, but still in that same vein. And I knew it wasn't your type of music, but I thought it would be Christian's type of music, so at least I thought I was going to have him to back me up. So what did you think about it?
Well, I'll say this on Christian's technical difficulty behalf. I think he would dig this. Christian showed me Suicide Boys. He came in town for a wedding last year, and I got to drive him from the wedding to where his car was, or to where the wherever after thing was. And Christian was like, "Yo, I want to play you this track," and I was like, "All right." And so he plays a Suicide Boys track, which I'd heard the name but never listened to their music, and I was like, all right, I mean, I could get it, it's gym music, workout music, it's kind of consistent through and through.
Right.
But so this track, when I played it, there was only a couple things that I couldn't get out of my head. I was like, why does this sound familiar? And it wasn't because Christian played me this track, it was because it reminded me of if Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly from Step Brothers did a hip hop track.
Oh,
it would be this track. So it was like, if you were to turn Boats and Hoes into Paris, this is.
Oh my God, dude!
So like, it doesn't ride with me. The beat I can get down with, but like from a rapping standpoint, it just reminded me of Will Ferrell. So like I could get down with that. So Will Ferrell, if you're listening, y'all reunite and cover some Suicide Boys and then Step Brothers too.
God damn it. All right, whatever. I'll take it. Right. I expected something. I didn't expect that from you, but I expected something similar, so I'll take it.
There you go.
Well, I know we were going to talk A24, but I think we should save it for when Christian's on. And also, Jinx is getting ornery. She's in her teenage phase, so I gotta get her outside. But Anthony, thanks for coming on. It was a blast, man. I love reminiscing on on the music festival times we've had. And like I said, we can, this topic is not over. I know you and I could talk about this for ages.
Right.
So
We got to get Christian's take too, because he had some behind the scenes experience too with a lot of festivals that would be really interesting to dive into sometime.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thanks for coming back. We'll hopefully Christian can sort out his shit and we can do this next week and recap 2023. But until then, brother, I will see you. Everybody else, thanks for listening.
Okay. Peace. Thanks for having me.
Of course.